I didn't expect the worst day of my life to end with a stranger's hand lingering on mine in the half-light of an office. But that's the cruel comedy of heartbreak. It strips you bare. Then throw someone in your path just when you're least prepared. My marriage had collapsed 12 hours earlier. 12. I could still feel the echo of the slammed door. The silence that followed. The sickening realization that the person I had trusted with my soul had already left me months before he walked out physically. And now here I was, hunched at my desk past midnight, staring at numbers on a screen that blurred and broke apart like my thoughts. And then there was Daniel. He wasn't supposed to be here either. Daniel was the golden boy of our firm, the kind of man who looked like he belonged in glossy ads for cologne or luxury watches. People noticed him when he walked in a room. But what unnerved me most was how he noticed other people. Like he was paying attention to everything I tried to hide. That night, he noticed me. "You're still here." His voice was low, gentle, but it cut through the fog. I looked up, startled, like I'd been caught crying in church. "You?" "Yeah. Just couldn't sleep." I lied. The truth sat like lead in my stomach. I didn't have a bed to go back to anymore. Daniel walked closer, his footsteps echoing in the empty office. He set his bag down and leaned against the edge of my desk. Too close. Close enough that I could smell his cologne clean. Subtle. Almost comforting. "Ethan," he said quietly, "you look like hell." A laugh escaped me, sharp and bitter. That's one way to put it. I expected him to leave after that. Most people don't linger around grief. It's contagious. Awkward. But Daniel didn't move. His gaze softened. And when his hand brushed mine on the desk just a graze. Accidental or maybe Noti felt something crack open inside me. Something I'd been trying so hard to keep sealed. "You don't have to tell me," he said. "But you also don't have to sit here alone." Those words, so simple, hit harder than any declaration of love I'd ever heard. Because wasn't that all I had wanted? For someone not to leave. I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat burning. "He's gone," I whispered before I could stop myself. Daniel didn't flinch. He didn't offer cliches or empty reassurances. He just nodded, his thumb brushing the back of my hand now. Deliberate this time. "Then let me stay." And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel completely abandoned. The thing about heartbreak is that it doesn't kill you all at once. It comes in waves: memories, anger, loneliness, silence, and each one knocks you down until you wonder if it's even worth getting back up. The morning after my husband left, I almost didn't. But Daniel was there. Not with grand gestures. Not with confessions. But with coffee placed quietly on my desk. With small jokes whispered in the middle of tedious meetings. With that same steady gaze that told me he knew I was falling apart and he didn't care. Or maybe he cared too much. I tried to keep him at arm's length. God knows I did. I didn't trust myself. Didn't trust the aching pull I felt every time our eyes met. I told myself I was just clinging to him because I was broken and desperate. But then he'd laugh, or touch my shoulder lightly as he leaned over to show me something on my screen. And it didn't feel like desperation. It felt like possibility. Terrified me. "You ever think about starting over?" Daniel asked one evening, weeks later, when we found ourselves walking out together into the chilled autumn air. "Starting over?" I echoed. The words tasted foreign. Impossible. He shoved his hands into his coat pockets, his breath visible in the cold. "Yeah. Wiping the slate clean. Letting yourself want something different. Someone different." I froze, my heart slamming against my ribs. Was he saying what I thought he was saying? "Daniel," I started, but the words died. He looked at me then. Really looked. His eyes were brighter under the street lamp. And for the first time, I saw something vulnerable in him too. "I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I just I don't like seeing you hurt. And maybe I don't know, maybe I'd like to be someone who makes it a little easier. It was the gentlest confession I'd ever heard. And it scared me more than any declaration of love. Because deep down, I wanted it. I wanted him. And wanting again felt like betrayal. But when Daniel reached out, his fingers brushing mine as we walked, I didn't pull away. I thought love was supposed to be fireworks. Intensity. Passion that burned bright until it burned out. That's how it had been with my husband. But Daniel was different. He was quiet warmth. A steady flame that refused to die out. One night, when the loneliness became too heavy, I found myself outside his apartment. I hadn't planned it, I'd just started walking. And somehow his door was the destination. He opened it without hesitation. Like he'd been waiting. I don't remember who kissed who first. Maybe it didn't matter. What mattered was the way it felt, not like an explosion, but like coming up for air after drowning. His lips were soft. His hands firm on my shoulders, pulling me closer, grounding me. When we broke apart, I whispered, "This is a mistake." Daniel's forehead pressed against mine, his breath shaky. Or maybe it's the first thing that's real. And God help me, I believed him. The weeks that followed blurred between stolen moments and silent fears. We were co-workers, friends, and now something more, but we didn't have a name for it. And I wasn't ready to define it. My heart was still bruised, fragile, but Daniel never pushed. He let me set the pace. Let me pull back when the guilt got too loud. Let me hold on when the nights got too cold. He was patient, maddeningly so. Sometimes I wondered if he felt as much as I did, or if I was just a broken man leaning on him too hard. But then he'd look at me with that steady, unwavering gaze, and I knew. He wasn't saving me. He was showing me I could save myself. One evening, sitting side by side on his couch, I asked, "Why me?" Daniel tilted his head, smiling faintly. "Why not you?" "Because I'm a mess. Because I don't even know who I am anymore." He reached out, tucking a stray strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was intimate, grounding. "That's exactly why. Because you're still here, still fighting to figure it out. Because you're real." And just like that, the ache in my chest loosened. Maybe love wasn't about finding someone to complete you. Maybe it was about finding someone who reminded you that you were already whole. The first time Daniel stayed the night, it wasn't planned. It wasn't even romantic in the usual sense. I had collapsed on his couch, half drunk from the whiskey he kept tucked away for nights when sleep wouldn't come. And when I woke, his arm was draped over me, heavy and protective. For a moment, before reality set in, I let myself believe this was normal, that I belonged there, tangled in his warmth, safe in the quiet rise and fall of his breathing. Then the guilt hit sharp, acidic. I had been married. I had promised forever to someone else. And though that forever had already been shattered, the pieces still cut me when I moved too quickly toward something new. I tried to slip away, to create distance before the sunlight revealed too much. But Daniel stirred, his fingers tightening around mine. "Stay," he murmured, not even fully awake. 2 letters. 1 word. And it undid me more than any speech could have. I stayed. Our connection deepened in ways I hadn't expected. It wasn't just the touches. The kisses stolen in the shadows of parking lots or the late nights when his lips traced the places where my heartbreak still ached. It was the way he listened when I rambled about my fears, about feeling like a ghost of the man I once was. It was how he never made me feel like a burden, never flinched when I cracked open and poured the mess of myself into his steady hands. But love, I was learning, wasn't just soft edges. It was terrifying. It demanded honesty, and honesty was a language I hadn't spoken fluently in years. One night, over takeout and beer, I confessed. I don't know if I'm ready to love again. Not the way you deserve. Daniel leaned back, studying me with those unflinching blue eyes. Who said I'm asking you to love me right now? His calmness frustrated me as much as it relieved me. Then what are you asking? I'm asking you to let yourself live again, he said simply. With me. Without me. However you need. Just don't shut yourself off. I stared at him, bewildered. You're okay with that? With me being half a person? He reached across the table, his hand covering mine. You're not half anything. You're hurting. That's different. The conviction in his voice made my throat tighten. No one had ever given me permission to be incomplete before. But even as Daniel gave me space to breathe, the outside world wasn't so forgiving. Work became complicated. People noticed things: how often we stayed late together, how his laughter softened when it was just us, how I stopped avoiding life the way I used to. Whispers spread. In the corporate world, perception was everything. And two men lingering too long over coffee cups or brushing shoulders in the hallway became stories before lunch. One afternoon, a coworker smirked as we walked by. Burning the midnight oil again. Guess spreadsheets aren't the only thing keeping you busy. The jab was harmless on the surface, but it sliced through me. Shame rushed hot under my skin. Not because of what we were, but because I wasn't ready for it to be exposed. Dissected. I avoided Daniel the rest of the day. When he caught me in the parking lot, his brow furrowed. I blurted, "We can't keep doing this. People are talking." He looked at me quietly for a moment, then asked, "Do you care what they think? Or are you afraid because you care what you think?" The question landed like a punch. I opened my mouth, then closed it. I didn't know the answer. Daniel didn't press. He just nodded slowly, like he understood the war I was fighting inside myself. "When you figure it out," he said softly, "I'll be here." And damn him, he meant it. The turning point came weeks later, at a company retreat in the mountains. The firm rented out a sprawling lodge, the kind with creaky wooden floors and fireplaces that smelled like nostalgia. It was supposed to be about team building, but for me, it became a test I hadn't signed up for. The first night, after too many drinks and too many forced smiles, I stumbled outside for air. The cold mountain wind cut sharp against my face, grounding me. That's when Daniel appeared, slipping a jacket over my shoulders without a word. "You okay?" he asked, his breath fogging in the night. "No," I admitted. Felt reckless, saying it out loud. "I'm not okay." His hand brushed mine, tentative, as if asking permission. "Then let me be the person you're not okay with." Something in me broke then, the walls, the shame, the fear of being seen. I turned, grabbing his coat lapels, pulling him into a kiss that was messy, desperate, and real. For the first time, I didn't care who saw. We pulled apart only when footsteps crunched nearby. A group of coworkers emerged, laughing, unaware. I froze, panic surging, but Daniel's hand stayed on mine. Firm, grounding. "They'll figure it out," he whispered. "Let them." And in that moment, I realized he wasn't ashamed. He wasn't afraid. He was choosing me, in the open, without hesitation. The question was, could I choose him back? The answer came the next morning. Over breakfast, one of the managers made a sly comment about how Daniel and I seemed awfully close. My stomach nodded, ready for humiliation. But before I could respond, Daniel looked up, calm as ever, and said, "We are." The table went silent. My pulse hammered in my ears. Then, slowly, conversations resumed, laughter returned, and the world didn't end. Daniel's knee brushed mine under the table. Deliberate. Steady. When I looked at him, he gave me the faintest smile, like he knew he had just shifted the axis of my world. And just like that, the shame I'd been carrying began to crumble. Back in the city, things weren't magically easy. My ex called once, his voice a ghost from another life, dripping with regret that didn't sound like truth. The call left me shaken. That night, I ended up at Daniel's door again. I feel like I'm betraying him, I confessed, pacing his living room. Like I'm moving on too fast. Like none of it meant anything. Daniel listened, silent, letting me unravel. Finally, he stepped closer, placing his hands on my shoulders. Ethan, grieving and healing don't follow the same calendar. What you had with him was real. What you have with me is real too. One doesn't erase the other. I searched his face, desperate for certainty. And you're okay with that? With me being this complicated? His lips curved into the softest smile. I didn't fall for simple. It was then I realized he wasn't just patient, was brave. Brave enough to love a man still piecing himself together. Brave enough to wait for me to catch up. And maybe, just maybe, I was brave enough to let him. The first time I told Daniel I loved him, it wasn't in a grand romantic moment. It was a Tuesday night, rain hammering against the windows, both of us exhausted after a 12-hour workday. He had cooked, insisting I eat something that wasn't takeout, and we were sitting shoulder to shoulder on his couch, plates balanced on our laps. He made some dumb joke about how he should quit finance and become a chef, and I laughed harder than I had in weeks. When the laughter faded, the words slipped out, unguarded. I love you. The room stilled. My chest tightened with fear. But Daniel didn't make me wait. He set his plate down, turned to me, and said simply, I love you too. No fireworks. No grand declarations. Just truth. Quiet and steady, like everything about him. And it was enough. The past has a cruel way of showing up at your door when you've just started breathing again. For me, it came on a Saturday morning, 3 months into whatever it was that Daniel and I had built together. I opened the door expecting groceries or a delivery. Instead, I found Michael, my ex-husband. He looked thinner, older, like time had scraped away the arrogance he wore like cologne. His hair was mussed, his eyes bloodshot, but the smirk was still there, the same smirk that used to charm me. The one that now made my stomach churn. Ethan, he said, as though my name still belonged to him. I froze, gripping the doorframe. What do you want? He had the audacity to look wounded. Can't I come see my husband? You don't have a husband, I snapped. My voice was steady, but inside, my pulse thundered. Michael's smile faltered. We made mistakes. I made mistakes. But you and we had something real. You can't just throw that away. I almost laughed. Real. The late nights. The lies. The empty bed. The betrayal that had gutted me. That was his version of real. Before I could respond, Daniel appeared from the kitchen, barefoot in one of my t-shirts, holding 2 mugs of coffee. He froze when he saw Michael. The air thickened. Michael's eyes narrowed, flicking between us. So this is why you didn't answer my calls. His voice was dripping with contempt now. You've moved on. Already. Shame pricked hot under my skin. Not because of Daniel, but because Michael's words hit the bruise I hadn't stopped nursing. The fear that I had moved on too quickly. That I was betraying something sacred. Daniel set the mugs down on the entry table, stepping closer, his presence steadying me. He doesn't owe you an explanation, he said, calm but firm. Michael scoffed. And who the hell are you? I'm the one who stayed, Daniel replied. His voice was low, even, but it landed like a strike. Michael flinched, his composure cracking. His eyes darted back to me. Ethan, don't do this. Don't throw away what we had for this. I looked at him, the man I had once thought was my future, and for the first time, I felt nothing but exhaustion. You already threw it away, I said. My voice shook, but it was true. You left long before I did. I just finally stopped waiting for you to come back. Michael's jaw clenched. For a moment, I thought he might say something cruel, but instead, he turned, muttered something under his breath, and walked away. The door clicked shut. I leaned against it, trembling, tears burning at the corners of my eyes. Daniel's arms were around me a second later, solid and grounding. You don't have to apologize, he murmured into my hair. But I did apologize over and over. Messy words spilling out of me. About being broken. About dragging him into my chaos. About still shaking from a man I no longer loved. Daniel just held me tighter. You're allowed to shake. You're allowed to hurt. But if you dare apologize for choosing to live again. And for the first time, I believed him. The incident with Michael should have been the end of it. But life rarely ties things up neatly. Michael worked in the same industry. Rumors spread fast, and soon whispers found their way into my office. One morning, my boss called me in. His tone was polite but sharp, the way people wrap a knife in velvet. Ethan, I've been hearing talk about you and Daniel. I felt my stomach drop. You know this firm prides itself on professionalism. He continued. Personal entanglements complicate things. They affect perception. There it was, that word again. Perception. It had haunted me my whole life. I wanted to argue, to tell him my personal life was no one's business. But my voice caught. The truth was, I was scared. Scared of losing the one stable thing I'd managed to rebuild. Afterward, I sat in my office, staring at the skyline, heart pounding. Was Daniel worth risking my career? Was I worth risking his? When I finally told him, his reaction floored me. They can fire me, he said bluntly. What? I stared at him in disbelief. He shrugged. If they don't want me because I love someone, then I don't want to work there. It's not that simple, I said, frustration bubbling. I can't just throw everything away. He studied me, hurt flickering in his eyes. So you'll throw me away instead? The silence that followed was suffocating. I didn't answer, because I didn't know. The next week was hell. I avoided Daniel, burying myself in work, convincing myself I was protecting us. But in truth, I was running. One night, long after everyone had gone, I sat alone in the office, head in my hands. I thought about Michael's sneer, my boss's warning, the whispers that clung to me like smoke. And then I thought about Daniel, his steadiness, his patience, his ridiculous loyalty. And I realized I was about to lose the one person who had seen me at my lowest and still chosen to stay. I found him at his apartment, packing a bag. My chest constricted at the sight. You're leaving? I asked, my voice cracking. He looked up, surprised. His expression was tired, guarded. You made it pretty clear you didn't want this anymore. Panic surged through me. I crossed the room, grabbing his wrist. No, that's not true. Isn't it? His voice was soft, but it cut deep. You've been pushing me away ever since they started talking. Like I'm something you need to hide. I shook my head desperately. I was scared. Scared of losing everything again. But Daniel, my throat tightened. You're not something I want to hide. You're the only thing that feels real. For a moment, he just stared at me, searching my face. Then, slowly, his shoulders dropped, the tension easing. Then stop running, he whispered. And right there, I knew my choice. I would stop running. The days that followed weren't easy. We faced questions, judgment, the sideways glances of colleagues who thought they knew better. But for every whisper, there was Daniel's hand in mine, steady and unflinching. We didn't make a grand announcement. We didn't have to. We just lived, openly, together. And little by little, the world adjusted. One evening, months later, we walked through the city, the lights casting everything in gold. Daniel slipped his arm around me, casual, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Do you ever regret it? I asked quietly. Regret what? Choosing me. All the complications, the mess, the baggage. He stopped, turning me to face him. His eyes were steady, certain. Ethan, you were never baggage. You were the destination. The words undid me. Right there, in the middle of the sidewalk. I kissed him, not caring who saw. Because finally, I wasn't ashamed. Finally, I understood that love wasn't about perfection or perception. It was about choosing, again and again, even when it was hard. And for the first time, I chose without fear. Love doesn't erase the world around you, it just changes how you face it. With Daniel by my side, life felt different, lighter, though the challenges didn't stop coming. Whispers at work became background noise. My boss eventually accepted that firing us would look worse than keeping us, especially since our performance was solid. Still, I could feel the weight of eyes on us, the quiet judgments. But Daniel never wavered. Every time someone tried to undermine us with silence or smirks, he would meet my gaze across the room, his expression calm, defiant, and grounding. But there was another test looming, one I hadn't been brave enough to face until Daniel pushed me gently toward my family. My parents lived 3 states away, in a quiet suburb where everyone still mowed their lawns at dawn and pretended divorce only happened in the movies. I hadn't told them the truth about Michael. Not fully. I said we separated. I hadn't told them about Daniel at all. You don't owe them your pain, Daniel said one evening, his hand tracing lazy circles on my arm as we lay on his couch. I know. I sighed. But I owe them the truth. And if you're going to be in my life, I hesitated, the words catching in my throat. They need to know about you. He kissed my temple softly. Then I'll be there, whatever happens. 2 weeks later, we drove to my parents' house. The trip felt longer than it was, my nerves twisting tighter with every mile. Daniel kept one hand on the wheel, the other reaching for mine whenever I went quiet. When we pulled into the driveway, I almost told him to turn back. But then I saw my mother on the porch, her eyes widening when she noticed Daniel stepping out of the car beside me. And I knew it was too late to run. Dinner started politely enough. My father asked Daniel about his job. My mother complimented his manners. But I could feel the tension, the questions hanging unspoken in the air. It was my mother who broke first. Halfway through dessert, she set her fork down and looked at me with that sharp maternal intuition I had never been able to escape. Ethan, she said softly, this isn't just a friend, is it? The room went silent. My heart pounded so hard I thought I might faint. I opened my mouth, but nothing came. Then Daniel's hand brushed mine under the table, steadying me. No, I said finally, my voice trembling. He's not just a friend. He's the man I love. My father's jaw tightened. My mother's eyes glistened, though with what tears of sadness, or fear, or disappointment I couldn't tell. I thought she began, then stopped, shaking her head. After Michael, I thought maybe you'd. Maybe I'd what? I asked, sharper than I intended. Pretend none of it was real. Pretend I didn't fall in love, get my heart broken, and somehow find the strength to do it again. Her face softened at my outburst, but she didn't answer. The silence stretched, suffocating. Then Daniel spoke, his voice calm, respectful. I know this isn't what you expected, and I know it's a lot, but I love your son. He's been through hell, and he's still standing. I don't want to replace anything or anyone. You don't have to accept me right away. But I'm not going anywhere. The conviction in his voice filled the room. Undeniable. My mother blinked, tears spilling now. My father exhaled slowly, rubbing a hand over his face. Finally, he said gruffly, "Well, I can't say I understand it, but he looks happier than I've seen him in years." It wasn't acceptance. Not fully. But it was something. And for now, that was enough. Back in the car that night, I gripped Daniel's hand so tight it hurt. "You didn't have to do that," I whispered. "Yes, I did," he said simply. "Because you're worth fighting for even with them." I looked at him then, really looked, and I realized this was no longer just about healing. This was about building something lasting, something worth every risk. Our relationship deepened after that. Not just emotionally, but physically. One night, after too much wine and too much laughter, I whispered the fear I had been holding back. "What if I'm too broken to be what you need?" Daniel cupped my face, his gaze fierce. "You're not broken, Ethan. You're scarred. And scars mean you survived." When we made love that night, it wasn't about erasing the past. It was about rewriting it. Every touch was a promise. Every kiss an anchor. He didn't rush, didn't demand. He just gave patience, tenderness, devotion. And for the first time in years, I let myself believe I was worthy of being loved that way. Afterward, tangled in his arms, I whispered into the dark, "I don't know how to thank you." He kissed the top of my head. "Don't thank me. Just stay." And I did. But even love, even safety, doesn't silence every demon. Some nights, I woke from dreams of Michael's betrayal, of empty rooms and slammed doors. Daniel would wake too, pulling me close, murmuring, "I'm here. I'm here." Sometimes I cried into his chest, ashamed of the weakness, but he never judged. Other times, it was the world that in true Dan offhand comment at work. A headline about another queer couple facing hate. The fear returned then, insidious, whispering that happiness was temporary, that the ground beneath us could crumble without warning. One evening, as we watched the news, a story came on about a hate crime 2 towns over. My stomach twisted, old panic rising. Daniel noticed. He muted the TV, turning to me. "You don't have to be afraid with me." "I'll always be afraid," I admitted, my voice raw, "because the world doesn't change fast enough." He took my hand, squeezing it firmly. "Then we'll face it together. Fear doesn't get to decide for us." His certainty was infuriating sometimes, but it was also the lifeline I didn't know I needed. The biggest test came unexpectedly. Daniel was offered a promotion, one that would move him to another city. It was the kind of opportunity people dream about, the kind that could shape an entire career. When he told me, I tried to be happy. I smiled, congratulated him, even opened a bottle of champagne. But inside, I was terrified. "Say something real," he said finally, studying me. I set my glass down, unable to meet his eyes. "If you take it, you'll leave. And I can't," my voice cracked. "I can't survive being left again." Daniel was silent for a long moment. Then he reached across the table, taking my hand. Ethan, I didn't build all this with you just to throw it away. If I go, you come with me. If you can't, then I stay. But leaving you, that's not on the table. The relief hit so hard it brought tears to my eyes. You'd give it up. For me. He squeezed my hand tighter. You're not something I give things up for. You're the reason I make choices. And this one, I choose us. That night, as he held me, I realized something had shifted. This wasn't just a love born from heartbreak anymore. It was a love that could withstand storms. A love that made me braver than I had ever been. And maybe, finally, I was ready to believe in forever again. The first time I heard the word forever from Ryan's lips, it sounded like both a promise and a dare. Forever was heavy, uncertain, but for once in my life, I wanted to believe it. The months following our reunion weren't perfecto love story ever ispit, they were real. Real enough that we fought over trivial things like whose turn it was to take out the trash or whether the bedspread should be white or navy. Real enough that I sometimes still woke up sweating from nightmares of being abandoned, only to find Ryan's steady arm circling me, his warm breath brushing the back of my neck as if whispering, I'm here. For a man who once thought himself too broken to love again. Every small, ordinary moment with him became extraordinary. One autumn morning, as I watched Ryan stir his coffee absent-mindedly before heading out to work, I realized how my life had shifted. It wasn't about grand gestures anymore. It was about the quiet mornings, the shared playlists in the car, the way he remembered my mother's birthday before I did. These were the stitches repairing me, thread by thread. But healing isn't linear. One night, after a long day, I snapped at him for something ridiculously small, a misplaced email draft. He just stared at me, silent, his expression unreadable. The old me braced for rejection, for the door slamming shut, for silence that would last forever. Instead, he crossed the room, wrapped his arms around me, and whispered, I don't care about the email. Care about you. I broke down in his arms, realizing this was love, not the fiery passion that burned and consumed, but the steady flame that refused to go out no matter how hard the wind blew. Our workplace noticed the change too. Colleagues who once whispered about my heartbreak now smiled knowingly when Ryan and I entered a meeting room together, his hand occasionally brushing mine beneath the table. I no longer felt like a shattered man dragging himself through the days. I was part of something, part of someone, and it made me braver. Even my boss, who was notoriously cold, called me in one afternoon. I don't know what changed in you, she said, her voice unusually soft. But your work has never been sharper. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. I didn't tell her that the secret was as simple and as complicated as love. Christmas that year was the turning point. Ryan insisted on driving me to my hometown in upstate New York. Even though he hated long drives, the snow fell thick, covering the roads in shimmering white. My parents had been wary of me after the breakup, worried I would never recover. But when I introduced Ryan as my partner, the relief in their eyes was palpable. My father pulled Ryan aside that night. I caught fragments of the conversation as I lingered near the kitchen. He's been through hell, my dad said quietly. Don't promise him the world if you can't give it. Ryan's reply was immediate, steady, unwavering. I'm not promising the world. I'm promising to stand next to him in it. Something in me cracked open at those words. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of forever. By spring, Ryan and I had built a home together, not a house, but a home. We moved into a modest apartment with squeaky floors and too many stairs. On Sundays, we grocery shopped like an old married couple, bickering about brands of cereal. On weeknights, we cooked dinner side by side, often ending up laughing more than actually cooking. And yet, beneath the everyday comfort, There was still the lingering question neither of us dared to speak aloud. Was this really it? Were we truly building something that could last? The answer came one quiet evening in May. We had just finished dinner when Ryan set his fork down, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "Ethan, I need you to know something. I'm not here because I feel sorry for you, or because it's convenient, or because it's easy. I'm here because every part of me chooses you. Every damn day." My throat tightened, and before I could respond, he reached into his pocket. No ring, no velvet box, just a simple silver band resting in his palm. "I don't need a ceremony, or a crowd, or paperwork. I just need you to know that I'm yours, in every way that matters." Tears blurred my vision as I slid the band onto my finger. "You idiot," I whispered, laughing through the sobs. "You've always been mine." Years later, when I look back on that moment, I realize it wasn't the silver band that bound us. It was the choice we both made to show up, to stay, to fight for each other when it would have been easier to walk away. I often think about the man I was before Ryan, the man who believed heartbreak was the end of the story. I wish I could tell him that heartbreak is only the beginning, a brutal clearing that makes space for something far more enduring. Now, when Ryan and I walk through the city streets, hand in hand, I no longer care who sees, because this love, our love, doesn't need hiding. It is messy, imperfect, sometimes infuriating, but always real. And real, I've learned, is better than perfect. On the anniversary of our first kiss, we returned to the rooftop where it all began. The city stretched out before us, glittering in the night. Ryan leaned against the railing, his arm brushing mine, and said softly, "You know, I never believed in fate, but then I met you." I smiled, resting my head against his shoulder. Fate didn't bring us together. Choices did. He kissed my temple, his voice thick with emotion. "Then let's keep choosing each other." And under the stars, with the hum of the city below, I knew we would. Forever wasn't a promise anymore. It was a practice, a daily act of love, stitched into every morning coffee, every late-night laugh, every argument and every reconciliation. Forever was us, and that was more than enough. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.